Whether we are in a retail store or not, we are constantly making consumer decisions. We enroll in gyms, we buy healthcare, we choose a restaurant. In fact, most of our daily decisions do not involve those really important existential decisions, such as who to marry or whether to have children or not, but rather whether to have a water or a monster drink or use cash or credit, and other really seemingly trivial decisions. A typical day is filled with countless consumer decisions and consequences of ones that you made prior to that. Starting with the brand of toothpaste you use in the morning to choosing a movie after work. Now, clearly, we put more effort into some consumer decisions than others, and we care more about some than others. So we're going to start with this effort by involvement model. You can think of effort as the amount of thought we put into our decisions, and involvement is how much we care about them. So here is our 2 by 2, and let's fill this in one cell at a time. Okay? So we're going to start with this first cell, which is low involvement and low effort. And this tends to result in something that is called brand laziness. The most likely items to fall into this cell are what are called commodity items. If you're not familiar with that, for instance, that would be non-processed food items like butter and flour. Okay? Brand laziness is always buying the same brand, but often for the simple and sole reason that it has always worked before. Okay? This is really nice for marketers while it lasts, but they are well aware that the consumer could be easily wooed away by sales and discounts with other brands. So it's great while it lasts, but it tends to be more precarious. Okay? Let's move to our next cell now, and notice that this is low involvement and high effort. And this is called variety seeking. Okay? Parody items most often fall into this category. Parody items, these are product categories where the several brands within that category possess functionally equivalent attributes, so making one brand a satisfactory substitute for most others within that category. And examples for a lot of people would be beer, candy, or cereal. And I say for a lot of people because for most people that is true, but obviously for some, they might have a particular brand of beer that they are more loyal to. But people sometimes prefer trying new things rather than sticking with the same familiar products. And in this case, the consumer is still low in involvement with these types of products, but shows higher effort in exploring new possibilities. We'll go to our next cell, and this is, notice, high involvement, but low effort. This is called brand loyalty. Hey, this is a marketer's dream because it is the most resistant to other advertising. The consumer's loyalty is based on past highly satisfying experience, but the experience could be with the function of the product or the value or image of a product. So clearly, some people become hooked or brand loyal because of how well a product performs for them. But let's look at a couple examples of image and value here before we complete this model. So brand loyalty is based on more than repurchase behavior, which would be brand laziness by itself, right? So instead, it's defined as repurchase behavior based on a strong commitment to the brand. This is the most resistant to other brand advertising, even when other products are lower priced. The consumer is sold on the brand to the degree that they're willing to pay more than for other brands. So a name I want you to be familiar with is Duran, because Duran discovered a really cool rule, which is called the 80-20 rule. He discovered that 20% of clients in a typical business buy 80% of the product. Only 20% of the products buying 80%. And those consumers are called heavy users. And those 20% tend to be brand loyal. Okay. So the idea, remember that brand loyalty, though, is not just based on product functionality. In some cases it is, but it also can be based on image and value. So let's take a look at a couple examples of that. Besides past experience with a product working well, brand loyalty can also come from that attraction to an image of a product. So many Lexus brand loyal consumers really like the upscale image of the Lexus. Okay. And then brand loyalty can also come from value. Southwest Airlines buys loyalty. They buy it with a rewards program and, with giving this value to consumers. Also with a credit card where people get miles for using their credit card. And Geico buys this with its package deals by giving consumers a lower price who are coming in and using their insurance under different categories, different kinds of insurance, home insurance, car insurance, and so on, and packaging it up. All right, let's complete our model now with the last cell. And notice that now we have high involvement and high effort. And this is called problem solving. Okay? Examples are purchases of, well, what you might call bigger ticket items. So things like an automobile, a home, a large screen TV, fitness equipment, those larger ticket items usually fall into this problem solving category. Note that the products given are the most typical to fall into each of these 4 boxes. However, any product could fall into any for one particular consumer. Like take toothpaste, for example. For most people, that is a commodity item like butter or flour, and it's a brand laziness thing. Hey, this is what's always worked for me. This is what I'm going to buy. But for another person, it could be variety seeking. They're often out to try something new, something different. And yet for another person, it could be brand loyalty because he or she is maybe convinced that the toothpaste makes their teeth whiter. And yet for another consumer, it may be a problem-solving decision because they just spent a fortune at the dentist and they're now searching for the very best combination of cavity and gum disease prevention. And they've learned something about a product, true or false, they've learned it, that convinces them that that toothpaste meets those standards significantly better than the others. And they're actually then in this problem-solving category. So these examples of items given are the ones that for most people fall into these categories, but understand the flexibility in here when we look at different consumers. Okay.